the first use of a steam-powered locomotive dedicated to bringing logs from the mountaintop down to the sawmill. Maybe the first in the United States, but definitely the first in Pennsylvania.
Okay, hi, I'm Ken Burkett. I'm with the Jefferson County History Center, and I'm also on the Pennsylvania State Historic Museum Commission Marker Committees. I'm here with kind of a dual purpose today. The History Center applied for this marker in 2022. Mike Benini, one of our staff, did all the research and helped complete the nomination, which was accepted by the state committee that year. We were actually in flux for a year when the funding was held back, but the marker came in this year, and we're happy to get it down here at the mouth of Callen Run. This is our newest marker in Jefferson County, Pennsylvania.
We're standing here in Jefferson County at the location of Callen Run, where it enters into the Clarion River. And this is a site of a very historic event in Pennsylvania, where the first use of a steam-powered locomotive dedicated to bringing logs from the mountaintop down to the sawmill happened. Maybe the first in the United States, but definitely the first in Pennsylvania. And it happened in 1864 when a man by the name of Reuben Wright conceived of an idea to use a steam-powered locomotive to carry the empty log cars back up the mountain and then bring loaded cars down with logs. Previous to this, they had used horses to take these empty they're rail carts, and they were running on wooden rails. Wooden rails were about 4 by 4, and these carts would be pulled up the mountain by the horse, empty. They would be loaded with logs, and then they would be coasted down from the top of the mountain down to the sawmill pond, where they were rolled into the water and then eventually sawn into lumber at the mill. And Mr. Wright, who was from Westville, New York, went to the gold fields of California in 1849, but he didn't mine gold. He operated a store, and he was very successful. And after a few years, he sold that, and he wanted to retire. But from the memoirs of Reuben Wright that I got through his great-grandson, he talks about how he went to Missouri and was going to start a mule business, supplying mules to the people traveling west across the Great Plains. But there was a shortage of horses. So he needed breeding stock, and he came east to Pennsylvania because he heard there was good horse stock here in the east. And he came right down this area. This road ended right about here at the sawmill that was built earlier. About 1852, the sawmill was built. And he bought some horses from the local farmer. But Reuben said, as he traversed this area, he was amazed by the towering pines and the hemlocks that grew in this area, and he was kind of intrigued by them. So when the farmer asked, "Are you interested in a sawmill and my timberland?" Reuben eventually bought it. And he actually went back to Missouri, closed out his business dealings there, and in 1854, he came here to what's now Callen Run and took over the operation of this sawmill. So Reuben had to understand how much it took to move a tree from the woods down to the mill and to operate the mill. And the typical method at this time, because we have steep hillsides, was to build a wooden railed tram road up the hills, make carts out of wood with steel wheels with wide flanges, put the logs on them, and then using a brake that they operated from the rear of the car, they could then coast this down the hill. And this was commonly used around this area. The trouble is, those empty log cars at the bottom of the hill had to be taken back up the mountain. So this is where a team of horses and a driver would have to then take these back up the hill, be reloaded, coasted down, but the horses left at the top of the hill now had to be brought down by another person to bring it back up. So it employed 2 people and two horses. Well, Reuben, having traveled from New York out to the gold fields of California, saw the power of steam. So in 1863 abouts, he went down to Pittsburgh and he bought a boiler and an engine, had it brought by steamboat up to the mouth of the Red Bank Creek, and from there, roughly 60 miles, he had it on a wagon and brought it out here to what was then a wilderness. This road ended at the sawmill. And here he built a steam-powered locomotive. It had an upright boiler. This was well documented in the book called Dams, Dinkies, and Sawdust by the man who helped build it in 1863-64. So at the height of the Civil War, this steam-powered locomotive was used, and it reduced the use of horses and the use of manpower, both of which were in high demand down at the battles raging across through the Civil War. Another thing that Reuben understood at the time was the value of this timber, because during the Civil War, well, just before the Civil War, he was selling 1,000 board feet for $12. At the end of the Civil War, that same 1,000 board feet was selling for $30. So he was making a lot of money and was able to invest in this kind of a new idea of using steam power. And you can see readily how this valuable pine lumber could be easily shipped down the Clarion River to the Allegheny, to Pittsburgh, to the Ohio, Mississippi, down to the Gulf of Mexico. There's a high demand for lumber for building wharves and pilings and barges and steamboats. So there was a very booming business for lumber during the Civil War, and Reuben definitely benefited from that. And in 1866, he sold the operation, which continued another 30 years until finally all the timber in this area was exhausted. The mill was pulled out, and today you won't even know it was here unless you read the history and can read the footprints on the land that happened 150 years ago.